Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwi and Andy Serling. Another rainy, dreary weekend here in New York. It's kind of subsided the drizzling, but we are still left with a muddy track, and we are unfortunately once again off the turf. It's just hard to deal with this weather. Hopefully, this next week looks like it should be a little bit better, but we are off the turf for 5 races, Sarah, and we have 9 to talk about.
We do, and I feel like this card perhaps a little bit more contentious than yesterday's, but won't know until we actually run it.
Wouldn't be hard. We'll head on over to Naira Bets. Use the promo code BONUS200. I think it's BONUS200, is it? Yeah, BONUS200. We'll match the $200 of your initial deposit playing track anywhere, anytime through Naira Bets. Head on over to nairabets.com. We have a $10,000 hit and split, which Eddie informs me involves Santa Anita and Monmouth's late pick fives. Opt in for that. You're going to play those late pick fives at either or both track. We also have, Eddie's excited. He was really worried we wouldn't have this, but there's the cross country. Starts a little after 3. I believe all those races should be shown in America's Day at the Races. We are on from 12:30 to 4:30. Are we on FS1 today, Sarah?
We are, I do believe.
Okay, so we're on FS1.
That's what I heard.
We've got double confirmation here. The slate and Sarah. I, on the other hand, as usual, know absolutely nothing. Race number 1. Little surprised at the odds, thinking they're going to change. The horse you have on top is 6-5. What did I miss about this horse?
Well, I don't think he should be 6-5, so I don't think you missed enough to warrant that discrepancy in price. I have a stat that's a little bit negative for the horse that was your morning line favorite in Stars and Stripes, but to talk about last man standing, I just like that he's taken some progressive steps forward and that he showed a little bit more forward position in that last start when finishing second to a Bob Baffert horse in Varney, who had faced some good ones, and he was favored in that spot. A last man standing just seems like he's been kind of that work in progress to get him out of the gate quickly, to get him a little bit more engaged in the race, because he had been so far back first time out, even in his second start as well, and he'd made a big move, but the race was controlled on the front end by Shingrala Road. So I think he's just one that's been moving in the right direction and can sit a little bit closer in compact fields given that last race.
Well, you clearly have a lot of company. I completely disagree. I don't think he has much speed, so unless he's a different horse, I don't see him being anywhere near forwarded here. I don't like the race he comes out of. The winner, as you said, was a 4-5 Baffert horse. Here are the Baffert horse's numbers in races he finished. 76, 76, boom, 86. The third place finisher ran a 64, and then he ran a 73. I'm kind of wondering if that race is as good as the buyer figure suggests. And with a horse that has little speed on a Todd Pletcher horse that's had 3 starts and just not getting done, he's not my cup of tea. Now, we'll take a look at Stars and Stripes finishing third. And for my money, Stars and Stripes is just coming out of a much, much better race and running third. The horse's Hop Sing and Duration had finished second and third in a photo behind Strategic Focus, who came back with a 102 buyer when disqualified up in Saratoga. And I frankly just thought this horse's race was extremely good. I know he was 31-1 first time, and he's going to be a fraction of that today, but I just thought he was way the horse to beat in here.
I thought he ran well. The 91 buyer speaks for itself because, as you mentioned, these two horses that finished 1-2, yes, they were piling up their chances, but they had several fast races in the past to suggest that that one was not exactly a fluke. And while he was not bet whatsoever in that race, you did have several experienced horses coming in with some merit, so it's understandable. I looked up second-time starting maidens in dirt routes at Naira. Bill Mott, 3 for 49 over the past 5 years, with the favorite 0 for 6. The 3 have hit the board under 2-1, 1 for 8. 5 in the money. The ROI with 49 cents over the past 5 years.
All right. The 4 makes sense to me as the Todd Pletcher horse that makes much more sense in this race, coming out of a better race. Generally, if the 2 wins, I'm going to lose. We are on a different page in race number 1. Race number 2, off the turf. And obviously, as we look at Antonio of Venice, he's an extremely likely winner of this race at a short price. And he doesn't absolutely need to lead, which is good because Mazzara is probably going to be in front. I don't have a knock on Antonio of Venice.
I don't either. I like that he was going to be one that would sit the right kind of trip in all likelihood. I like when he's forward, he could take the lead, but I don't expect that to happen in this spot with the horse to his outside, and even Charlie's Express and Heaven Street have some forward position, though I don't know if they're quite as quick as he is. And he just has the most proven dirt form over time of these horses. He's faced some of the better horses. He's come back in decent form. He's had a little bit of time off since that last race, but at least he showed this year that he can compete still and show up with some bigger numbers, I could not make a creative case against him.
Yeah, I think the one kind of small knock on him, and I'm not against him, is he kind of took a while to get his act together since coming back off of a 7-month layoff. When he finally got his act together, he went on the shelf for 3 months. That bothers me a little bit. In other words, what happened? He finally got his act going, and now you want him going forward. Having said that, he's the horse to beat. I moved my pick to Credit Worthy in this race, and there's no conversation with Chad Brown. I'm not shocked he left him in, though. He did scratch him in Saratoga when this race came off on the last day of the meet last week. But he's got a big dirt pedigree.
He does.
And my friend David Aragona said to me that this horse is apparently working extremely well in the dirt. And I didn't want to. It's not that Antonio Venice is a default pick, because he's clearly the best dirt horse based his last race.
Oh, sure.
But I had some reservations, and they left him in. It does seem like when Chad leaves these horses in, more often than not, they run badly. But David said he's working well. He won't be, he's not. The problem is, and obviously, it's not going to be 6-5. He's still going to get bet off dirt form, so it's
but
not
I agree.
right.
I don't think
Right.
he's going to be the favorite. So
Right.
I totally see your point with that. There is that dirt pedigree. You have to catch a Torre.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I like
Yeah.
Cacciatore,
Yeah.
actually. He was a pretty cool horse. Linda have him?
I don't remember, but I could look it up.
4 wins yesterday for Linda Rice on that card, and I don't even think she won with some of her shortest priced
That's
horses.
true.
Race number 3 at 6 furlongs. You went to Army Proud. There is not a lot of form to go on in this race.
No, there isn't. And originally I had a little bit of interest in No Problem adding the blinkers. That one will not play today. So at least with Army Proud, you're getting a horse that is coming in second off of the layoff, first time in for a tag on the dirt. And looking at the sloppy sealed track effort in his third start, it's a moderate concern, but those were better horses than he's going to be facing in here, and the figure still stacks up
47
plenty.
Pyre fits well in this race.
Beaten that many lengths, it's not the best looking, but at the same time, when you look around at everybody else, I would have gone with Free Dance on top. I just wish that he had been showing a little bit more early speed lately than he has been, and that
That's
concerns
fair.
me.
I think that's very fair with him. I think that his lack of speed was a bit of a concern for me as well. I do think he's a bit dangerous getting back to dirt, but he's also a horse that's had 7 chances on the dirt. And Magic Beats in some ways looks dangerous because with the scratch of the 5, the potential in being loose exists, but I don't believe it because I think the horse that I picked is going to be the speed in here, assuming he can get out of the gate. But we'll take a look at the first part of his race and then the first part of the race until the top of the stretch. I mean, this is a horse, he doesn't break. He ends up, sort of back to last after close to last break, and then he kind of rushes up into the middle of the race, and he'll rush up down the inside before understandably falling apart. These are just that, listen, this is not a very strong field, and these are the kind of second-time starters I will default to. What happened, guys? That was not what I wanted. I wanted to show from the start to the quarter pole, but for some reason that was misinterpreted.
Well, he ends up getting to
What happened
towards
to the middle
front.
part, Eddie? Okay, well, I have to clarify these things. Okay,
suppose.
I don't know what start to quarter pole means other than showing the start to the quarter pole, but what do I know? Anyway, we don't need to show any more of this race because this part's incidental. The point being made that he didn't break. He was well back. He rushed up to the inside, and I'm hopeful in a second-time starter with a clean break that this horse can be in front.
And if you find somebody that at least did a little bit of running at some point in their first start, which this horse did, and looking at everybody else, I'm just tired of many of these who've had several chances, or there just wasn't really that big of a case to make for some of the others.
No, I agree, and I do think he's kind of interesting. And frankly, since I've been making fun of Jovias, I'm going to finally take a Jovia in this race. Race number 4 kicks off the pick 6. No carryover. I'm glad I didn't play. I would never have used the last. I would have been alive, but I would never have used the last winner.
Me either. I was really annoyed because I had Co-Conspirator on my ticket and then the favorite one instead, and then I was out the last 2 legs anyway, so it was all okay.
Who was Kokens? Oh, okay.
The 44-1 time, finished second.
Well, beaten considerably.
Yeah, it was not close.
Race number 4. We'll take a look at Suerte in this race to start out. And it's interesting. The pace projector has funny joke as the speed. I have trouble seeing Suerte not as the speed. But one of the reasons that I took High Tide in here was because he dueled with Suerte last time, which is not really where you expected him to be. And he's a funny horse, High Tide. You take that race out, he runs like the same figures like clockwork on dirt. He's not that good, but he runs the number like every time.
Oh, yeah.
And the reality of that number that he runs is, unless Suerte runs that figure he ran 2 back, which I highly doubt, he's the horse to beat. So while I respect Suerte, but Suerte's going to probably at least have to deal with Funny Joke. And I just think at the end of the day, maybe I've taken the horse that consistently runs the better races. You've gone in a very different direction with Bold Victory.
I have. And with Suerte, he also just doesn't win. You know that he's going to be forward. His last win, you have to go back to August of 2023. So it's been a long time. And even looking at Presidency, the barn has just been so ice cold that I couldn't put that one on top
Let's show him
at
winning.
a short price. So
Quarterback.
I think that, look, I know that the Rick Dutcher barn was able to get a victory the other day, and he does have some back races that absolutely put him in the mix, and he's been facing some decent company. I could not take this horse at 9-5, though.
The problem is the IRAD factor. I completely agree. Do we really need to bet this horse? The reason I agree, he's
And his
an
last two
unreliable
races
horse.
have been awful.
And this was a funny race, and one of the reasons I wanted to show it because this was the day after a huge speed bias on January 18th. And if you watch the card, it felt like the track sort of evened out as the day went on. But the first 2 or 3 races, if you just took them in isolation, were total outside flow races. Now, I'm not saying a bias. It may have just been something that occurred for whatever reasons. But it felt like that race kind of really fell into his hands there. Now, he can win, but I agree with you. I don't need any part of this horse at 9-5, at least on the front end.
And so then I was looking at Beachwalker, and yes, he has come back to life lately, but I didn't necessarily trust that he was going to replicate his last race as one that had been off form for some.
If he replicates his last race, he has no chance to win this race.
He's also been off form before that. And so with him going to be coupled with the entry and just high tide, a horse that hasn't won in a while, I've liked the reclaim for Bold Victory, who, yes, I think his most recent races, they haven't been anywhere near what we've seen from him when he's been a little bit more competitive. But I like that he goes back to this barn and the cutback in distance for a horse that really has absolutely no early speed, likes to come from the clouds, and at least there are a couple of horses that like to be forward in here. I think it's just an interesting move for a horse that's going to be a price, and it has at least shown that he can show up when the paces are a little bit slower. And I thought that last time he just had no opportunity to get involved in a race that was controlled on the front end.
I think his last win, Nixon was president. I could be wrong, but it's been a long, long time between drinks for Bold Victory. For what it's worth, turning back on the dirt, Ilke Cantermachi is 6 for 32, 19%, $1.42 ROI. He is 1 for 5 off the claim. 2 of them were short prices, and 4 of them hit the board. I like turnbacks as much as anybody. I don't particularly like Bold Victory, but he is a big price in this race. Divine Leader is probably one we should mention in here who gets cut in half.
Is he going to be forward?
I don't think he's that slow. I mean, I imagine, I don't know where the pace projector had him, but I don't think he's going to be that far behind. He'll probably be in a stalking spot. I hadn't seen the name Scooter Davis in quite a long time, but I wasn't surprised when I saw he's winning at 24%. I thought, holy cow, he's in a massive slump. He usually wins at a much higher percentage. And then he comes here and he was in a much tougher spot.
Yes.
But man, he's a tough horse to trust. But this is a very sneaky, tricky barn, the JKX barn. So anyway, he is dropping down. He's not my cup of tea, but he's not impossible in this race.
I looked at him. He has a chance. I just went in a different direction.
Race 5, we'll take a break after race 5, unfortunately, is off the turf, a confusing race off the turf as well. I misnumbered this one, so thank you for having the right numbers, so I was able to get the right numbers. For some reason, I wanted there to be a couple of 9 horses in this race.
You wanted there to be more horses in this race,
know,
and you know what? I don't blame you.
No, less. I wanted less.
Oh,
I actually
okay.
had 9 and 10 for the 10 and 11 in this race, so I was going in the other direction.
I was a little surprised by your picks, and so
yeah,
that makes a little bit more
I was a little
sense.
surprised by yours because I was going to call you and say you picked a horse that's not in the race, and before I said that, I said, maybe I've got this one wrong.
Wow.
I'm
You've really grown
maturing.
so much. It's all that nice time alone that you had up here yesterday to really reflect and think about life.
I have plenty of good time alone. Let's take a look at Margin of Error, who I picked on top in this race. I don't know. He's claimed by Rudy, who seems to be going well. He figures to be somewhat forward. I don't have a big opinion here, but he gets Flavian Pratt. And he just seemed
He actually
to me to be one of the
doesn't.
ones to
He gets
beat.
Irad Ortiz Jr. now.
Oh, where's Flav?
Flavian's on the 1A.
Oh, thank you for that.
You're welcome. I just found
The
that
1A.
out.
Oh, he's on jurisprudence.
Jurisprudence, yes.
Oh,
But look,
who is
Martin
scheduled
Bear,
right.
who has been in consistently good form. I like that he was forwardly placed in that last victory over Bold Endeavor. I think that, yes, he was favored in that last start, and he was forward and ended up fading in there. But the pace was a little bit more honest in that mile
badly.
race.
Lost by a length.
Right. I mean, he was 4th by a length versus horses that are better in all likelihood than the ones he's going to be facing today.
That's what I thought. Gunnett's got a couple of wins since that race. I know he looks like he's moving up, but he's not really moving up. On the other hand, your horse, Smile Mom, is not moving up either.
No, and I don't think that a mile and a quarter was ever going to benefit him last time, a horse that was able to finish third in there. And I also don't think that he's a horse that does his best running when he's not able to control on the front end. And while he did break a little bit slow in that race, he then shied in towards the inside, bumped with a horse that was to the inside of him, and just never established the early lead in a race where I think it was further than he ultimately wants to go anyway. Coming in first off the claim here, slight cutback in distance for him with Jamie Ness. He is 0 for 5 first off the claim in dirt routes at Naira with 3 to finish in the money, but overall, 38%, 72% in the money, $2.13 ROI.
Right, but the problem with that is that the magic of Jamie Ness that we see at parks and other tracks doesn't really happen.
It doesn't, but it's such a limited sample size that I wasn't willing to say it's not possible.
How limited is it for a guy that does
5?
nothing but win with every single horse he claims, and the fact that he's had no success? I've thought about this, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not sure the right answer here, but for a guy like this that does so incredibly well, and I remember all of the claims were sort of horses that could win, and he's just not winning. So I agree. You're absolutely right. It's a small sample size,
No,
but
I
it
think
is
overall,
a little
it
interesting
is a
for a
good
guy who
point.
wins at such a crazy high percentage with his claims.
It's a good point overall when you go outside of just dirt routes, because he has poorer stats with first off the claim in general here than he does at other places. So I think that's a valid point to bring up. It's just that for me, I hadn't seen enough failure with dirt routes with 3 hitting the board.
Of course he
five,
can win.
you know?
He's a huge player in this race. So is Unlimited Potential. We'll look at his last race, and I know it was just a few days ago in Saratoga, but I mean this race, the last race, that was a tough race, and I know it's sloppy like this, and I do think a concern with Unlimited Potential might be a wet track.
I think he does a little bit better with a little bit less distance to, or maybe caps out right around the mile. I think that looking at him with the last race that he ran going the 6 furlongs, it was a huge number for him. He has the capability of hitting those 90s, and then I just don't think he ran that poorly in that last start at Saratoga, where
He actually ran pretty well in that race.
Pentathlon ran very well and really seems to appreciate Saratoga. And I'm not a big horses for courses, but he just seems to show up there.
It was a little surprising. I mean, he's a horse I had tried a couple races, and he managed to get it done in that race with the long shot Ridgewood runner. A little bit complicated, and jurisprudence stays in as well. That's the first 5, the late pick 4, and I know we're both extremely excited to talk about race number 6 today, because that race, I'm kidding, we'll take a break and we'll be back with race number 6.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With Naira Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with Naira Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NairaBets.com.
We're back. We have some rider changes, by the way, so I'll
do.
share them with you. People interested in race number 2. Louis Rivera is on Spun in 1, the 1A. Joel Rosario is on Antonio of Venice. And Ricardo Santana is on Missouri. And the other rider change that hadn't been given was Silvestre Gonzalez is riding Unlimited Potential, his normal rider. As Sarah mentioned, Irad is riding Margin of Error. In the last race, Practical Love, Flavian Pratt will be riding the 13 in race number 9. All right. More exciting stuff to go. So this is it, sir. This is the race.
I mean,
this
we've
is
all
like
been waiting
the
for.
Kentucky Derby of off-the-turf $50,000 maiden claiming races where I don't. Why did Miguel scratch intellectual?
I don't know.
I thought he was super interesting. If I think he's interesting, Miguel should have left mine. I didn't do anything with the lighting, Dan, but thanks for asking. 80 gold.
Yeah.
You love this horse. I love this horse. I'm kidding. I don't know what else to pick here.
I don't either. And look, it's not to say that there's absolutely nobody that's run a competitive race with what we've seen from this one so far in the 2 dirt starts. So if somebody wanted to go in a different direction, I wouldn't blame them. But looking at the kind of progression that he had from his first to his second dirt start and just adding those blinkers today, showing that he could be a little bit more forward in that second start. I think that he'll be a little bit more forward in here. I know that he was one that showed a little bit of early position when he was getting over to the turf and tired there. It just doesn't really seem like there's a ton
There's
to
nothing
go
else
on.
going on. And the thing about Eddie Gold is the first race, he actually had legitimate trouble in that
Yes.
race. And he was a little bit interesting. It was also a big speed track, so his race was better than it looks. So I think when you look at it through that lens, his 48 buyer makes a lot more sense. And the reality of this race is my brother would like to know if he can call me on WhatsApp right now in case you're interested.
Oh, you should give him a call.
Yeah.
See what he likes in this race.
Bad timing for him. He's not watching Talking Horses. I'm not hurt. And I think that the one thing about this race that's sort of evident by our picks, and maybe we're being reckless in doing it, is leaving Sebastian the first out. Now, listen, maybe they've had him on the wrong surface all along. On the other hand, he's a Marshall Yeh, and he's going to take money
That's
simply
my
because
thinking
of
as
his
well.
races. So if there's any value to be had in here, in theory, it's probably betting against this horse.
It is, and look, it's not to say that this is the type of horse that can't just take to the surface and be better than what he's going to be facing in here, but at the same time, there wasn't dirt move-up pedigree for me to see, and I thought that he was one that he just wouldn't be the fair kind of price that I'd want to take with him trying this surface for the first time versus horses that have at least shown they can run a little bit relative to everybody else.
A little bit being the operative word. Race number 7. We'll take a look at Merceau. And I don't know anybody out there that couldn't use a wine at this point. Running second last time, improved on a muddy sealed track, gets one again today, and I think he's the worst to beat.
She is. I mean, looking at that last race, it was a move forward as she got that gradual stretch out in distance. I thought that she had some more forward position in that race versus her last time out, where she was just not involved early whatsoever. It actually still made up a little bit of ground going the 7 furlongs and what was a very honest pace. She's handled the wet track. She had blinkers today. There wasn't a ton to knock about her. It's just that there was that big step forward with that last race, and I thought that maybe somebody else might want to keep her company early.
Well, I don't think she's the speed in this race. I mean, I imagine that Danzig's going to go from the inside in here, and I don't know what to do with Danzig coming off of a 14-month layoff, but isn't this horse going to be the speed?
Potentially.
This horse has
Excuse
sprint
me.
speed.
I thought that Cheryl's Delight could be forward as well.
Well, she can be, but she's not as fast as Danzig, and I have to imagine from the rail that Irad's going to come firing out there if the horse doesn't get left, and that horse does scare me a little bit. I'm surprised you don't have Danzig anywhere in there. You're not worried about this horse wiring the field?
It's not a productive race that she exits off 365 plus days with maidens. Todd Pletcher won for 7 past 5
I
years.
get it.
Low ROI. I know Tappet Trice, full sibling, but
I don't care
this is
about
also
that.
a 4-year-old filly making her second start.
All right, talk about Reality Star.
I really liked her first race. This one was so far back early on, and I felt as though the pace didn't completely fall apart in there either, with Cue the Duck Boats really up and close to that pace and still able to finish second in there, and then Naked Eye coming from much closer than the horse that Reality Star was. It just seems like it's going to be one of those horses that Shug has that progresses gradually with experience, and it's also just been a productive race with Cue the Duck Boats coming back and doing well. She cut back and she tried Shred the the winner of Naked Eye came back to run and then tried Shred the Gnar, tried the turf, but then when she cut back and returned to the dirt, she ran third, Cue the Duck Boats second next time out, totally different trip.
How did their figures? I didn't.
It was a 68 for Cue the Duck Boats in her second start next
After
out.
running,
And
but
then
she
a
ran a better than
70
68 here.
I think she ran a 69.
Right.
Yeah, so it's
so
all
they
been
didn't
fairly
improve.
similar.
They didn't improve. You're saying.
They didn't necessarily improve, but they didn't regress either.
Yeah,
So I would say
I
that
think a
that
key with
holds up.
Reality Star is that she blew the brake last time. She jumped up at the start and broke 1 to 2 legs slow. It's a little tricky to see, but she did and just completely dropped out of the race. And I don't disagree with the rest of it. I took her to upset as well, but Merceau and Danzig scare me. You've got the two first-time starters. I have the 8 by default in there for 4. It does have a big pedigree, but
And it's win early pedigree as well.
yeah, but this is not early. This is, June of their 3-year-old season. This is not early. This is a horse that's coming out so late, and I feel the same way about the 7, but we'll see what happens at 1 1/8 in race number 7. We're off the turf the rest of the way. Race number 8. Thought Willing to Risk It All is a dangerous horse in here, and both this horse and Devil's Got a Cause are going to be forward in here, and I think they're both very logical players.
Yeah, I mean, Devil's Got a Cause is one that can handle both surfaces, and so is Willing to Risk It All. And when you go back to some of the dirt races for Willing to Risk It All, it's not that he hasn't won over a wet track, but he finished second over one and just was facing some decent horses when going for that allowance with non-winners of 1. So cutting back to this surface, I don't have a problem with that for him whatsoever. I thought that he ran well last time out on the turf, which was a step forward from his race where he was just wide and never got the opportunity to save ground in the start before that when he was getting back to the grass, which I think there are legitimate excuses to make for him in that race. And he just makes a lot of sense given what we're left with in the rest of this race. I thought it was between these two.
Yeah, I'm going to give Register a chance in here. I'm not sure. Dave Donk seems to be in really wanting to run this horse in the turf, but I'm not really sure because I think this horse has plenty of good dirt races, and I'm glad to see him back in the dirt. It worries me a little bit the others have more speed than he does, and Katie needs to find a way to get him a little bit more into the game, but he's been closer in some races, and I know he's got some bad races, but he's got some decent dirt races as well. I thought he'd be a slightly better price than the others. I have no problem, obviously, with the 5 and 9 in this race, but I'm going to give Register a little bit of chance in here. I just don't like anybody else.
No, because no one's run a particularly fast race on the dirt outside of those 3.
Yeah, I think the 3. I agree with you on the 5 and 9, but I'm going to try to beat them with the Register in race number 8. Race number 9, actually, this is a fun race in the turf, but it's still a pretty good race in the dirt. So this is actually one of the more interesting races on today's card. And we'll start with Practical Love, the MTO. I don't have a knock on this horse. The horse that beat him was a first-time starter, Dry Power. He improved 3 buyer points in his subsequent start. Third-place finisher, came back and ran a similar number, stretching out, I think, 1 point lower. I don't have a knock. I think this horse is extraordinarily logical. I picked some other horses, but I'm not against this horse by any stretch
I'm not
of the
either.
imagination.
And this horse was forward on the dirt, capable of being forward on the turf in a 5.5 for a long sprint as well. That figure, if able to replicate from the last dirt start that we're taking a look at, that wins here because no one else has shown up with anything similar to that kind of effort.
Yeah, no, I think he's extremely logical in here. What is going on with Laughing Lady?
I just like that this one showed speed as a 2-year-old on the dirt and ran into a very salty field at Saratoga, running behind Immersive. Tired that day, well beaten in that spot, but this is not the same kind of company that she was facing in there, and I like that at least she was able to then stretch out and try to take that step forward and sustain that speed, have a little bit more stamina when switching over to the grass. Now she's been off since then. I thought with that blinkers on, a little bit of progressive improvement from 2 to 3, and just the company that this one kept and was able to show speed against. And that first dirt start, I thought would be a little bit interesting at a price, but Practical Love is the one to beat for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to take Upon a Star. Seems like when Wesley Ward ships here from Keeneland, he does it with purpose. His horses have been running extremely well in New York. Obviously ran a big figure for Brad Cox first time out, disappointed subsequently, but even the disappointing efforts ran fast enough to be competitive here. Nothing brilliant. Also thought Fast Market was a little bit interesting. What's wrong with his dirt races? I thought his dirt races fit very, very well in here. I actually like getting back on the surface for him. I think he makes sense. I'm sort of 2 5s and 13s most of the way.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I think that Sugar Run staying in will be good for the money that this
Well,
one
he
is
may take
likely to
some speed. I don't blame Mark for trying. The horse did show a lot of speed last time. We are done. Sarah, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Head over to Naira Bets. Use the promo code BONUS200 and we'll match $200 of your initial deposit. Go over to NairaBets.com. Play any track, anywhere, anytime. Play through Naira Bets. We have a $10,000 hit and split late pick 5 at Santa Anita and Monmouth. So if you're going to be playing those, more of reason to do so. Opt in over at Naira Bets. Cross Country Big 5, 3 at Monmouth, 2 here. All of them will be shown on America's Day at the Races from 12:30 to 4:30 on FS1. The crew is down at Monmouth. Sarah, myself, and Maggie are back here in New York. Chris Griffin's up next to reprise Scratch and Changes. Have a great day.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With Naira Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with Naira Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NairaBets.com.